Testing, 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 testing. Not really working. Testing. That's getting better. Now it's better. That works. It was working now. Oh. Let's try the other one.
Good morning, you guys. Good morning.
Testing, testing. Is that better? Testing, testing. Can people hear it?
Good morning and welcome to Shift. Thank you for coming today. Shift is our program where we listen, learn, and engage. And today we have our own Melanie DeLuca. Melanie has been a member of Trinity for 15 years. It's a pretty long time, Melanie. And she has served as confirmation leader, council president, and she told me her most favorite role is being on the outreach committee. And our outreach team is a very strong team, and they look for ways to serve the community and the world. And so I want to welcome Melanie, and I'm really excited to hear about your trip to Cartagena, Colombia.
Thank you.
Welcome.
We'll get this adjusted. How's the volume? Pretty good? Awesome. Well, thank you all for being here, and it's just exciting to be able to share more about both my trip to Colombia and about our ongoing work as a congregation with Opportunity International. It works. So first of all, it was a real privilege to represent Trinity. So we've had for several years a specific partnership with Opportunity International as a congregation, and so the outreach committee had chosen it to be our international partner, and this was the first time we actually traveled and saw it, in person up close to know what it was like. I had the chance to travel with another church, Christ Presbyterian Church in Edina, and so two of their pastors and some of their members were there. They also have had like a 20-year partnership with this organization. So there was a lot of great sharing between our two congregations. Wanted to learn more about Colombia and the challenges there. Obviously, bring back context and stories for all of you. Discover how the programs that we know we've supported and seen on paper, how do they really change lives? That's what we want to do. And to develop insights that can inform our work as a congregation as we continue this kind of partnership. So that's why I went and represented Trinity. So a little bit about Opportunity International. It has an in-country partner called Agape, and that is the registered nonprofit in-country, and Opportunity International. Faith-based organization, and it's really on the model of, they call it the Good Samaritan. So it's a faith-based organization, but they serve everyone no matter what. So the people could be of any faith, no faith, Christians, non-Christians, and they could be served. They serve the extreme poor, but it is in that model. They particularly focus on the people in extreme poverty. And when we talk extreme poverty, around the city. You know, here, if you were in the hills, you would be like, you know, Beverly Hills. We're going to look up and have our mansions up there and look down on the city. There, it's the people in extreme poverty that are up on these hills. The picture in the middle is ingenious. Those are tires, like old tires filled with dirt. The very poor have just built on the outskirts of these major cities. Some of the core programs that Opportunity does, one of the reasons that we chose Opportunity International as a Trinity partner is because I call it they teach people to fish. They don't just come and say, here is food or here is something. Together who want to be a part of this village savings and loan. They have a box, literally a wooden box with 2 locks, and these people select who will keep the box and who will keep the 2 keys and who will keep the notebook that records everything. So they do financial literacy first. So they're teaching people about money, about savings, about all the things that you might not know if you grew up in extreme poverty. And then the people save pennies a day. So when you have so little money, you can imagine you're saving a penny or 2. But it's the concept of saving. It's the education that they're getting. Then once they've learned to do that, they make tiny little loans to each other. So you're going to get $1, and we decided together, and then you're going to pay it back when you used your dollar for something. And then once they've learned all those concepts, then the organization provides bigger loans that the group manages. So now you need a $50 loan for a sewing machine because you're going to start a sewing business. So now you have access to credit. So one of the things in the developing world is people who live basically by what I can do today. I can sell something, I can pick something out of the garbage dump, I can make something. They have no access to credit, they have no collateral. So even if they have drive and ingenuity, they can't get ahead because they can't get anything to invest in that sewing machine or that, 10 chickens so I could start an egg-laying business. So this organization first teaches the skills, mentors them, and then gives them small loans. And their staff come from the neighborhoods, which is amazing. They take the best of their people that have gone through the program, find people as potential staff people, and then they become loan officers to start the next savings and loan. So it really multiplies, and about 80 or 90% are women, because again, many of the women are the ones that are attracted to this program and are needing the support. Another thing they do is called finance. It's sometimes farther away, it's dangerous to get there. So the people who want to start a school are helped with curriculum and training and mentoring to start these little schools. This was a school we visited in one of these neighborhoods. Another project that evolved So they started this program. If you look at the filter in the middle picture, who have water. The river and water is accessible, but it's awful. I mean, you could imagine this terrible river water that's very contaminated, and they are able to have it doesn't use electricity. These last for 30 plus years and can give a whole family safe drinking water. So it was one of the things that kind of touched my heart. And as I talk today, I think all of us do so much, both as a church and as individuals, to help other people. And I think sometimes we're just looking for where's the most effective way where my interests kind of intersect with need in the world. And I think that's what our outreach committee does as a whole, is we look for where can we be effective as a church and how can we really make an impact and know that we're making a difference in the world. So that's how we ended up with Opportunity International. And then my little side story is I looked at my personal self and said, gee, I'm also a Rotarian. And I looked at water filters. I said, one of their prime things is safe water. I wonder what would happen if I told my Rotary friends about this particular little piece of what Opportunity International does. Well, one thing led to another. I like to tell stories and I like to talk to people. So I not only told one Rotary Club, I ended up telling 15 Rotary Clubs, got a matching grant, and we have one community separate from these that Trinity is serving, that the whole community is going to get water filters because I told the story. So imagine if all of us take our own individual capacity and that of our church and we share. That's what I think being present in the world, and I love the sermon today because it's all about hope. And I think what Opportunity International does so well is they give people hope and they give them dignity because they give them a means for making a living. I love this couple too. This woman and her together and are getting food. So that's just the ripple effect of how one thing where they help someone in that community ripples out, and now she's serving 50 of her neighbors. The graduation model. At least they had some ability to kind of connect. What they're doing now is they're going even deeper into poverty. So they call it the people that are too ashamed to even come to the meeting, who wouldn't go to church because they don't have shoes and they don't have anything to wear. So they said, we've got to help the poorest of the poor. So I went to one of their meetings, you see on the left there, where they met with the whole community and they talked about this model. Every single the Village Savings and Loans, they start prior to that. They give people food for like 6 months so that they can actually learn, because most of them go without food. And they build up their dignity that I belong here. And so they start even lower, and then gradually help all those people get into their regular programs. So it's like a pre-program in order to take advantage of their village savings and loans. The young woman kind of holding on to the post, we met in this community. She has no documentation, so her kids can't go to school. So the first thing they'll do is try to help people get documentation, get their kids in school, give them enough to eat so they could even concentrate to learn, and then they'll start them on their other programs. So a much more intensive program takes almost 2 years, where they hand hold and work with these families until they can get to a better place. And the mayor's office has really taken notice of their work and is also partnering with Opportunity International to say, you're going to help us find the people who need things the most and get them kind of on the books as a person in our community, because most of these people are just in the shadows and people don't even know they're there. Another new program that I was really impressed with is called Shalom, and it is but instead, they asked them to tell them a story. Tell me about your relationship with your family. No leading questions. Tell me about your relationship with your faith, with your community. So they looked at these areas and they listened. And what was brilliant is they trained pastors to do the listening. So they trained 60 pastors in Colombia to go out and listen. And we met with all the pastors when we were down there. I shouldn't say all. We met with about 10 of them. And they said, it's not something we do. When do I ever get 2 hours to sit with one person and listen? And I'm not leading, I'm not talking. They said that was the hardest. For the pastor, sorry, Pastor Ann, they said we couldn't talk. We could just ask the question and listen. And then later they would tape them and they would listen for the themes. And out of that has come a curriculum. So this winter I'm going to do a class or a whole night on Shalom because it's fascinating. And my brain as an educator right away said, oh, this is applicable to a lot of people we work with. It happens to have only been the program developed for the countries they're working. So it's in Spanish or, it's developed now for the countries they're working. There isn't a U.S. version, but there's a lot of cross-referencing I see in the needs of the poor and what they're doing with Shalom. But a fascinating thing. So we went to this church. So this was a church in the community, and the pastor is there in green, and the man seated is Brian Olarte. If some of you heard him, he was here a few weeks ago. He's the Colombian executive director of Opportunity, and his eyes are closed because he's translating. And so he's a wonderful translator, and so he was doing that for this pastor. The man in the middle and the other picture told his story. He was one of the people, a Venezuelan refugee, who was interviewed for the Shalom Project. And he came and shared his story. And he said they were forced out of their farmland by all the conflict that was going on in Colombia. And so they end up in the city with nothing. No money, no job, no anything to do. And he said it didn't take long before the work I was being forced into was dangerous work. It was gangs. It was just very terrible. And he said, it's not where I wanted to be, but we had no food, we had no nothing. And so he said he ended up pulling up his shirt and showing how he'd been shot. He literally had bullet holes. And he said, it took me the realization that, it was my life. And then finding this church and being interviewed and telling his story, he said, I have to get out of that life. And so with the help of the church, he's now a church member. He got out of all the dangerous things, and he has a wife and a little girl now. And so it was just really a tough story to hear about the desperation that good people are often in when they're in such extreme poverty. So a little bit about the insights that are gained. What I found was that OI and their affiliate Agape are doing incredible work. I always wonder when I give money to lots of places, like, is it really a legit organization? Are they really doing the work they say they are? And, I like to really get as hands-on as I can because, one, I care about the things I give money and time and resources to, but I also want to know it's effective and, like, it's doing good work. And it's got a methodology that I think is one that I agree with and I feel like is going to make a difference in the world. And so that was confirmed for me. Their staff are so dedicated, so committed, and their I think is brilliant because there's hope. And now when they form these village savings and loans, the person running it, these young women, they got on the bus, they were with us, they were sharing with us, crisp white shirt with the logo, and they're just so organized, and I was just so impressed with them. Then I find out they were a client. And then when they recognized their skill and their drive, they trained them, and now they're the employees. And now their neighbors can say, look, they were one of us, and now look at what they're able to do. So that modeling of, there's hope to get out of my situation is just so powerful. And I just love that about the organization. Certainly, I didn't realize how faith-based they were. I knew they were faith-based, but I love their partnerships with the congregations there, with all the churches, with how they just integrate all of their work. So again, they serve everyone, but their heart is definitely faith-based, and they're very innovative where they're starting new programs, and they're a continually learning organization. They didn't just stay with their initial microfinance. They've gone deeper and they've met other needs. So those were things that I learned and was able to bring back to our outreach team and now to you as our congregation. A little bit about Colombia. People have asked, well, what's Colombia like? Certainly there's issues. There are gangs, there are lack of resources, there's many displaced people crowding into cities, limited economic opportunity for those who are very poor. You see poor education, environmental issues like unsafe water or, the garbage all over like some of us who have traveled to other places have seen. That is certainly present in parts of Colombia. On the other hand, it's a country with a long history. It's a beautiful country. It has parts of it that, are just lovely. And so you see these contrasts from, parts that are very historical, very, developed, and the poverty areas. And there's really a lot of potential. It is a beautiful country, natural and human resources, and people with faith and drive to better their situation, and then real active efforts to make a difference, which is what organizations like OI are doing. They've also had economic stability and investment since the early 2000s. So, there was a lot of guerrilla warfare. There was a lot of conflict back in the 90s and late 80s when that was going on all over Central America as well. And now it's a time of stability and of investment and, like I said, tourism. And what I didn't realize about Colombia, they are right at that tip of South America. So they have ocean on both the Atlantic and the Pacific side, which is very interesting. And they're the second most biodiverse country in the world after Brazil. So when I think I'm also believe in really protecting our environment, I think, oh, that's an important country to invest some time and energy in because we want that biodiversity to be protected. And it's the number one in bird diversity, which I was fascinated by. So I think, when we have a heart for countries that are really making an effort to improve themselves, it benefits our whole world. A little bit about what I think this means for Trinity. Our church mission is to serve near and far. And when I think about serving far, I really believe our most effective work is when we establish partnerships. We are not in these other places and can be there day to day and see and deliver the kinds of aid that we might want to do. But when we have a partnership, and whether that's Opportunity, a Lutheran aid organization, our Seeds of Hope, we have specific partners in those countries that can be our extension, and we can feel like we have a real ability to make a difference there. Again, Opportunity International is Trinity's newest global partner. We've been together now working on things for a couple of years. And a few reasons we chose it. Obviously, we love that model where they taught people to fish. We just felt like that was a powerful model that would resonate with our congregation. They also are in multiple parts of the world. So, they're not just in Colombia, they're in India, and they're in Africa, and they're other places. So as our congregation wants to learn or explore other parts of the world, they're a partner that we can still do that with. And their faith foundation, which is super important to our committee. One interesting thing, some people say, well, why do we even worry about far and global? We have a lot of need here in our community or in the U.S., and we do. And one of the things that I've learned is that only 7% of our charitable giving goes outside of our country, which is pretty small. I thought it would be a lot more. But for all of us who give, only 7% goes outside of our country. And I feel like as a country that has been given much, they always say that your circumstances are based on where you were born. I was born here in the U.S. versus being born in Colombia or India or Africa somewhere. And so reaching out beyond our U.S. borders, I think, is super important for a country that has so much, just to give hope and to have a relationship with the world. A little bit, too, for myself, I really feel like my faith grows most. I call it at the edge of my comfort zone. It's real easy for me if I just sit home and write a check somewhere or, do something that's comfortable. I don't feel like my faith grows a lot. I first felt that real change when I went to El Salvador with Habitat and with our programs we've done down there for a long time. One of the things Bishop Gomez said there is, I was so struck by the faith of the people. And I said, oh my gosh, they're so faith-filled. And he said, well, they have nothing else. They don't have power, they don't have money, they don't have wealth. So they have to rely on faith because there is nothing else. And I thought to myself, that makes sense to me. I could be a convenient Christian. I've got a nice house, I've never been hungry, I could be conveniently comfortable. But when I pushed myself and, went to El Salvador or have gone to Colombia and have really seen what the people there are facing and needing and see their faith and their determination and their drive, I'm like, okay, now my faith and my skills have grown too. So there's definitely something that I feel we change when we go beyond that comfort zone. And I think that's true for our congregation. We joined this congregation because of its outward outreach focus. So 15 years ago when we were looking for a church, this wasn't a church that was just in. I'm just doing for me and my members, and that's all I care about. It was doing work in the community, and so that's why I joined. And I think we've become more and more known for that in this community, and I love that about Trinity. A little bit about what I think this benefits us as a congregation. Again, OY's mission and that of Trinity are naturally aligned through our faith foundation, and I love that. I think we provide resources beyond direct funding. So again, Trinity does some things that provides funds for the work of OI, but all of us, in our own hearts and in our own connections, find other ways that we connect. Just like I told my story to Rotary groups and found a whole nother way to support this work, somebody here might say, gee, this would be a really cool thing for a group I'm a part of, or something that a family wants to have as part of their personal mission. We gain insights as a congregation into the needs of the poor and strategies to serve them. That's why I hope you'll come back when I talk about Shalom and I go a little deeper into that, because it really helps us in all of our work, both here in the U.S. and abroad. And again, it allows us to evolve if we decide that as a congregation we want to work in more parts of the world, we could do that. So a little bit about how you can stay engaged, and then we're going to take some questions. One is just to continue to follow our OI events and activities. Jill is wonderful about organizing us all for our outreach committee and all that we do, and so please stay engaged. I'm going to do a Shalom class and dive deeper into Shalom, and I think you'll find that very, very interesting, and the methodology of kind of how they collected and did that research. We'll do some kind of a winter fundraiser so that we can raise some funds to make more of their work possible. Hasn't been planned yet. And then we're also looking to plan, if we can get enough interest, a spring trip to Colombia. So if you have some interest, I'd love for you to just let Jill or I know. We'll just put you on an info list. But to go down and experience what I experienced, it's not hard. I mean, it's a relational trip. We're on the same time zone even, so it's not a hard flight, and you'll stay in a regular hotel in Cartagena. You'll get to see a beautiful country, but you'll get to really get into these communities with OI staff, meet the people, go to one of the churches, and really feel for yourself what it's like for people in another country. If you've never done that, I so encourage you to pray about it and think about it. It really is life-changing for your own faith. And then today, if you want something, some of you have already done this, but we had this at the Agape Market. We had alternative gifts. So if you want to give a gift to somebody that just doesn't need any more stuff, you can actually build one of those water filters for $55 is the concrete and builds it. And another $25, so these can be two gifts separately or you can combine them, is to do all the training for the family in safe water. And then you get a free ornament that were made out of recycled aluminum, if you can believe, beautiful angels and crosses. And we even have our Unpoverty books, which is the story of clients of Opportunity International. If you haven't read it, it's excellent. So it's a way that if you say, gee, that would be a way I'd like to contribute. I set up the display again. We had it at the Agape Market, but if somebody would like to do something, you can do that. So I think what I'll do now, Jerry, is take questions.
Thank
And
you,
I think
Melanie.
that was the end of my slides. Together we change lives.
Thank you, Melanie. Really interesting time. How long were you there?
I think it was 6 days.
All right, a lot packed into 6 days for sure. So I see our mics are a little
I'll
buzzy
stay
if
over
we
here.
get too close together. Yeah.
We'll stay apart.
All right. So, and I love the Shalom listening sessions. Those are, I mean, that is very frequently used to learn more about audiences. And I know we learned about it at Augsburg as well, just deep listening and taking time with people. And wouldn't we all love to talk to somebody and have them ask us questions about ourselves? So let's see if anyone has comments or questions.
Kathy.
You do accept on recording.
Thank you. So your a potential trip in March and April is very appealing.
Good.
Would that be a 6-day trip approximately, as short or longer? Don't know
We'll
yet.
have some control over that. So depending on, our group, we have some control over how many days. But, that's kind of a standard amount of time that the OI Insight trips are, but we would have some ability to do that. We have not chosen our dates yet, so some of what we wanted to do is find people interested and then kind of work with that group to see if we could massage the best dates for everybody.
Right, and then you'll be able to sort of determine some costs as well. Right.
Yes.
Yeah, it does sound appealing. It's interesting how you said the role reverse of, here we build up to have the views, and there you have to climb up because other people are not going to do that. So it must be beautiful.
Other questions?
You did such a great job of telling your story and explaining. I think that there's a lot to sort of take in. I will say it's nice to see the Ricks here.
We dragged them in all the
Yeah.
way from multi-states.
Yeah, well,
It's perfect.
once a member of Trinity, always a member of Trinity, right? It's always home.
It is.
Well, thank you for this presentation. I know I learned a lot about the country and had heard so much about, cartels and the banana plantations. So this is a different side, as well as just hearing a little bit more about the tourism industry. I mean, it sounds like it's beautiful with the oceans on both sides.
Yeah, it is a beautiful
Yeah.
country, and again, a lot of need, but great potential. Oh, couple more.
It's awfully good to hear that this is something that's working. And
Yes.
I am one of the same, I have the same feeling. We get inundated by requests to do this, that,
Absolutely.
here, there. And you and I were at El Salvador
Yep,
together, so-
you know.
So, but this is a program that works. That's,
Like I said, having their model where they teach people, whether it be in graduation model, the dignity to even get on the ladder, how to even get on the first rung, and then that they build people up to have livelihood so that I can provide for my own family. It creates such power and dignity and hope with the people. So then again, our sermon today, talking about hope and giving that hope away. I mean, we have the hope that we have as Christians, and how can we not give that hope to people all near and far? And so I agree. I think that's why I went, was to say, does it work? Is it something that is really making a difference? Is their model one that, and I'm a pretty critical eye when I look at that. I've been in education my whole life. I've started programs. I'm a tough sell. So I really looked deeply at their model. I questioned a lot. I really talked to the pastors, talked to the staff, and so I came away convinced that it is doing the work that they say they're doing, and it is an incredible model.
Melanie, are there any churches around here that you know of that are involved in Opportunity International?
There are some. I should have, but there are several. And like I said, the one that I know best is Christ Presbyterian in Edina, which is a very big congregation. And there's also like companies and groups of people. So it's not just faith-based. They have probably their biggest contributors are just individual donors all over the country. And then they have a lot of organizations and even workplaces that will want to adopt a partnership. And some places, do for a short time, like Christ Presbyterian has been doing things for 20 years. Others, like I know, I think it was St. Philip the Deacon right down the road, did an opportunity project for like 5 years, but they haven't been active in the last couple. So, all congregations just evolve in different ways. So they may come back and do something again. And then lots of individuals, there are groups that, get together like 10 of my friends, and we're going to sponsor a program. So just like most organizations, they fundraise in a variety of ways, from individual donors to churches to others. I think what intrigues me in really thinking about the church partnership is how much we learn as a church when we pick the right organization that we partner with, because then all of our outreach efforts are going to be strengthened when we get smarter about how we help. And Jill's been great about all the reading we do. You know, there's a lot of things we probably did wrong in the beginning, where you just want to give everything to people that need it, but you're really maybe taking away livelihood in that country because you just gave everything, and you might not have developed any lasting kind of skills or promise in those communities or people where they can help themselves after you leave. And so that's where we've done a lot of discerning as an outreach team to be really smart and effective. But Jill wants to say something, so.
I was just going to say, one of the questions that I've had out of this listening is, you know, it's a model that works. And I keep thinking to myself, why aren't we putting that model work here? And in fact, I have spoken with somebody at Interfaith Outreach about this, and there is some interest. It's a model that, as we've said several times, it works. And that to me is the most convincing. And it is so respectful. That's the part that I really like.
I was just going to mention another church too is Wayzata Community Church has been involved with Opportunity
Yeah.
for a while. And one of the things when Brian was here, Brian Olarte, this past October, and he was here a year ago, mentioned too, which I always think of ideas and how we can engage more people in learning. You don't have to travel. Is there might be a possibility, this is, you know, maybe like language tutoring that we do by Zoom, you know, and teaching, you know, kids and English and Spanish, and Wayzata Community has been involved with that. But one other question I asked Melanie, I remember when you returned, is how does Colombia compare to El Salvador? Because many of us, or several of us, have traveled. We've traveled for a long time to El Salvador and have seen the poverty. It's a third world country. And then how did her visit to Colombia and the community compare?
Yeah, and I'm happy to answer that. What I would say is the particular neighborhoods where they were doing the graduation model and such were worse than I saw anywhere in El Salvador. I mean, they were really, really, really bad. Some of the places were similar, and yet Colombia had more first world looking places than I ever saw in El Salvador. So more contrast. So there were areas like if you just stay in the old town in the beach area of Cartagena, I mean, you could be in Miami, not quite, but really nice, beautiful hotels and beaches and convention center. I mean, things I did not see at all in Colombia. So from a countrywide governmental standpoint, they've got to be doing a better job like managing investment, foreign investment. It's a safe enough place that you'll build a big hotel on the beach, or you'll kind of build a convention center. You'll have a tourism industry. El Salvador didn't really have that. It was pretty meager. But when you hit these poverty areas, some of them were really, really bleak. And so again, I think it's this balance. But that's what I would say is my general overview, is that there are places worse than I saw in El Salvador in some of these neighborhoods, all the way up to much nicer areas than I saw there, and just that bigger contrast. And thank you, Jill, for mentioning that project. The one that Wayzata Community has done is that in Nicaragua, Opportunity started a school, which is very interesting, where they were teaching high school kids entrepreneurial skills. So they would be ready, not wait till their parents had to join a village savings and loan. And there they were tutoring in English. The new one that they'd like to do in Colombia, in the areas that our church has worked, is they are teaching people job skills. And one of the big job needs is in the tourism industry. Because now that they're getting these hotels and convention centers, they have need for workers. But if the workers have no English, they can't compete and get a job. So their dream was, could we develop some classes, and those could be over Zoom, to teach people English for the tourism industry. And as somebody that used to run adult ESL, you know, my light bulb started going off. And we did that for other industries in here when we taught our ESL classes of give particular language, particular phrases and terms and things that you would need in the tourism industry, and start with that and help adults. So that is one project that might come out of this as they start the graduation model, and some people want to be prepared to work in that industry. Great questions. Yeah, Mike.
Melanie, how would you contrast a trip like El Salvador, where you went to go work for a week, versus this kind of a trip where you're learning, looking over people's shoulders for a week, just to sort of, you're being a tourist in the work that they're doing? How do you contrast
Yep.
those two as a trip and the value that you got from that?
It is a different trip, but can be equally impactful. And I've done both. So I've gone and laid bricks and worked on a habitat house. I loved it. But you are doing heavy labor, and you're doing that day after day, and you have a cultural component, but you are doing heavy labor. And not everyone can do that. And I can remember a lot of people saying, I wish I could go, but I just physically can't do that heavy labor. In fact, Mike came with me once right before he got his knees replaced. He was having a hard time because his knees were in bad shape, and we're working in that heat, and you're down with concrete and blocks, and he shouldn't have tried that right before a knee replacement. So that's the difference there. Here, we were spending our time really learning about the organization and meeting the people. So we did everything from we'd get on the van and we'd go to the neighborhoods. We sat with the lady that feeds her community, and we heard her story, and she's sharing the work that she does. We met with the pastors. We went to church at one of the churches. So we were learning, and we were in community. And what that does is it builds hope. So for the people there, they're like, if people are willing to come and learn and care that I'm starting a business or that I'm trying to build a school, they get tremendous hope out of our visit. What we get is really feeling, and our faith is strengthened by really feeling the impact that you can make. So there is an element where you'll still get to go to Old Town, and there's a bit of a tourism element, but guess what? That brings dollars badly needed to their economy. So, you shouldn't feel bad that I went out to dinner in Old Town or walked along the beach, because we are bringing money to their economy. So you just have to think about it. It's slightly different. You're not doing the physical work. Although if we went back, I would love to do a day or half-day project with one of the churches. When I was in that church, I just desperately wanted to paint their blank wall a pretty color. I mean, just something to give them cheer and encouragement, which they would never have the money to do. So I think if we went back, we would be able to do a day project with one of the churches just to build community. There's nothing better than working alongside somebody on a project. But it is something where people of all physical abilities can do this kind of a trip. So those are the differences. But great question, Mike. Yeah, I'll stay away from the other mic.
The people that are so poor, how do they even get a plot of land to squat on? Is it public land and they're allowed to be there? And is that where they have access to their water filtration? And then secondly, does the government have a program at all that gives them anything?
For the most part, these slums are squatters. They just find open land and they tack together a shack, and that's where they live. The difference now, though, is the government is starting to recognize the needs. So there was one of these communities that the people just squatted, and it was a little bit outside of town, and they had a little bit of land, and so you'd see chickens and pigs and all of that. And they've got a new political party that just took over, and they actually, for communities that had been there long enough and kind of had the drive to apply, they gave them title to that land. Like the government bought it from whoever and gave it to the people. So there are land issues when you go to these countries. People don't necessarily own their land. The filter could be moved. But what ends up happening is the reason that is an effective method here is because it's an unregulated land. There's no way to pipe water in or anything. Up on these hills, the government did put some tanks and just dump water in some tanks. That was their access way up on that mountain. Is just, and you look in the tank and you can see all the little critters. It was like, So you need the filter. But that's, that's the reality, and that's why that household strategy worked better than, say, we're going to lay pipes and plumb in your house, because there wasn't land ownership. And again, that's part of what evolves. First, they even have to get the people papers. So one of the things they do in the graduation model, like to the woman who had no papers, is they go to the government and they work with her, and she tells her story, and she said, I was from Venezuela, I'm a refugee, here's my story, and they give her papers, so that you can now send your child to school, or you can connect with any governmental services that are available. And so there are some. But here, the government, the mayor's office, was working with Opportunity International to partner, saying, we can give these services, but we don't even know who those people are. So you go find those people, let's connect them to what's available, and then help them further on. But great question.
I wanted to say thank you so much for coming to this shift, and thanks for asking about having shift. We're excited to do more, and we'll have both podcasts and in person. And so in January, we'll have a little schedule for you. So thank you, and have a great day.